I don't want to struggle with my weight. I want to eat the foods that I like, and I don't want to be super restricted. And then I also don't want to be obsessed and having to measure and weigh things and just be like so constrained with what I eat. All the joy goes out of it.
You're watching Developing Potential with Diana Keuilian.
Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today we're discussing a very important question. What should we eat? Now, this is a question we have to think about all day long, multiple times a day. And so we're going to talk about it. Like, what is healthy eating? There's so many contradictory ideas that are out there in our face, and we have to figure out and decide what to eat. And guys, this is something that I've been just obsessing about for the past couple of decades. And so I do have a few things that I've come to realize about this whole topic of what do we eat? But I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from Maine and Shelby. Where are you with eating? Do you guys eat the same thing every day? Do you know what you're going to eat? Or do you have any, like I've been for 2 decades, kind of confused?
I feel like I'm confused still, but I eat the same thing every single day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's just simple. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
I kind of already know my macros and where I'm at. But I always want to stray and then I get scared.
Yeah. So you try to lock in.
Yeah.
But then there's also these other food temptations, right, cravings. Mm-hmm. These are things that I experience. I don't know if you do.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to be interesting with my recipes and stuff, but then I just too many ingredients freaks me out.
Yeah.
So it overwhelms me.
Yes. How about you, Maine? Are you locked in on what you eat?
I have this chronic issue where I can't eat the same thing.
So is it you're bored, eating the same thing every day? For me, it's too boring. What's your issue with it?
I just feel like I'm not getting the most out of life, eating the same exact thing for 5 days straight. Right.
There's so many flavors out there. Yeah. Why are we leaving them?
Why am I even at what? Yeah, it sucks. And so every once in a while, I have a good rhythm of what I should be eating in the portions and all that. That I got locked down. But
sure.
Just figuring out, what's appropriate and not, and adjusting accordingly.
Right. And there's so many different schools of thought when it comes to healthy eating. So I'll just run down all of the different ways that I've tried eating. And I started in my mid-20s when I was starting to feed my kids, when my kids were babies, and it was okay, it's time to start feeding them solid foods. And I just felt this weight of I want to feed them well. I want them to, have a good relationship with food, to get all those nutrients that they need, to not struggle with their weight. And when my kids were really young, this statistic came out that said that, my son's generation was going to have a lower life expectancy, a shorter life expectancy than my generation. And that quote freaked me out because this is, my baby. I want him to have better than me, So that kind of started my interest in nutrition. And, that was a good motivator, was let's feed my kids the best. But then kind of in the background always for me was I want to be at a healthy weight. I don't want to struggle with my weight. I want to eat the foods that I like. Like Shelby said, there's good food out there. And I don't want to be super restricted. And then I also don't want to be obsessed and having to measure and weigh things and just be so constrained with what I eat that all the joy goes out of it. And so it started me on this journey. And one of the first stops on this journey was veganism. And at the time, again, this was back when I was in my late 20s, I had an uncle who was in his 50s in amazing shape. He was actually a competitive swimmer at his age level and held a title in the US at the time. So this guy was took care of his body. He had a heart attack while he was swimming, and this shook the whole family up. He was fine. They pulled him out of the pool, full recovery, but it was this big wake-up call of he's not overweight, he works out. What are the other risk factors? And diet is a huge one. as well as stress. But we all kind of fixated on diet. And at the time the China study came out, the China study, what I took away from the China study was all animal protein is bad. Avoid animal protein. Don't eat dairy. Don't eat, meat. Don't eat eggs. That was my takeaway. And so for a few years, I tried it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be vegan. And I found, again, health stuff was like the forefront, but really for me, like the motivating factor is like, I don't want to struggle with my weight and I want to enjoy food. And I wasn't able to do that with the vegan diet. But it's so crazy when you start to kind of like go into a school of thought when it comes to dieting or food, how diehard people are with it and how like, people get nasty and it's almost like you're joining a cult where it's like, this is how we think. And I just couldn't get on board with it. It's like, I don't know. It felt too restrictive. And so from there, I moved on to the macrobiotic diet, which is a little lesser known, but it was a lot of brown rice and a lot of miso. And I think I gained more weight on that diet, like quicker than any other diet. It's like when you're doing this, like, primarily, I want to be at a healthy weight. I want to not struggle with my weight. I was like, okay, this isn't working. We're going to forget this one. And then I moved on to paleo, which, paleo is essentially only eat things that the caveman had access to. And it sounds really sound. Maine, you're nodding. Have you done the paleo?
It was like a fad, and I was given like a limited amount of it, and, info, and I was like, okay, cool, let's just do it.
Yeah, let's jump on the bandwagon. This is going to solve all our problems, And with the paleo diet, you're not counting calories. You're not even really paying attention to macros. You're just paying attention to like, is it processed? Could the caveman get it? I can eat it. I can eat it in any quantity I want, whenever I want. And so similar to Maine, I jumped on that bandwagon, and there was definitely results for me. But it was too restrictive because let's face it, like life puts us in situations where we have to socialize and we have to eat with people. And it is a disconnect when you're sitting there at a family function and you have so many food restrictions that you're kind of not part of the group. That bothered me. And it was time consuming when you're making yourself food and then you're making food for the family because the foods don't match up. So after that, it was keto, which I didn't fully get on board with keto because I love fruits and vegetables. And I was like, I cannot do like so low carb where I can't eat like a salad. So long story short, the next phase for me was really like kind of processed fitness foods and processed diet foods where it's really focused on calories, how much protein, and then the fact that there's really low carbs. But then there's not a lot of focus on how processed is this product, right? And we've had those experiences where it's like, I want a bag of chips. Well, chips are a very processed, food group. Well, I'm going to get this bag of chips that says protein on it. And when you flip it over, and if you're just looking at the nutrition, look, it only has 2 carbs. Look, it has 19 grams of protein. And you can justify, and then they even throw fiber into some of these things. And you can justify, look, the numbers make sense on the back. Like it's a math equation. The numbers add up. But really, what you're doing is you're eating a very, very processed food. And so where I've come to on this journey, which is really what I want to share today, is what I've discovered. And we've talked about this in a previous episode when I really went into the obesity code by Dr. Jason Fung, which if you're listening to me today and you're like, I've struggled with my weight, I've struggled with, knowing what to eat and all of that, definitely read or listen to the obesity code just to give you this foundation of knowledge on understanding why our bodies put on weight. It's a hormonal balance. It's not a calorie thing. And so what I've discovered is that way more important than what do we eat, first of all, is when do we eat. And this is like a huge shift because my focus, and I feel like for most of us, the focus is what do I eat and not when do I eat. And so, and gosh, like everything is marketed to us too. And then you look at these packages and what you read on there, the benefits and all of this, it sounds so good. Like what's being sold to us sounds so good. But then like we get on the scale and we look in the mirror and like our pants are tighter and we're like, that's not what the package of protein chips told me it would do for me, right? So this concept of when to eat was the first piece of the puzzle for me in realizing that it's important to have periods of time where we're not putting any food in our body at all. And that's food, that's flavored beverages, that's anything where our digestive system says, okay, food is coming, I need to start releasing insulin. And so really the thought here with having large periods of time without any food is to allow our insulin levels to get very low as our body is not digesting. And so obesity being a hormonal disease and not a calorie imbalance, this helps us to get back to a place where our insulin is at healthy levels and we're not storing fat every day. So when to eat, right? And so the next step I decided for me is not, again, it's not what to eat after I've determined when to eat. And I've shared in previous episodes that I am doing a 4-hour eating window right now as I'm testing this out. I said I'm doing it for 18 months because I love doing these experiments where I eat from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And so from 10 p.m. all the way until 6 p.m. the next day, I'm drinking water. And so I'm allowing my insulin levels to get lower. So, for you implementing this, whatever degree of taking breaks in between eating, whether that's a 12-hour, so if you stop eating at 7 p.m. and you start at 7 a.m., and just making sure you have a full 12 hours where your insulin levels are really low, or just only eating at your 3 meals, right? Eating your breakfast at whatever time, not eating or drinking anything with flavors and sweeteners in between until you get to lunch. And then just eating whatever you're going to eat at lunch and then having another big break until dinner, right? Giving your body this time to let the insulin go down. And so then the second thing I've discovered is what to avoid. So we've got when to eat. And then I'm realizing as, the first several months of being on this eating window schedule, kind of letting myself get a little crazy and eat whatever I want in that window. And I've come to realize it's very important to avoid certain things. And the number one, it makes sense, guys. Like we knew we weren't going to be able to have our cake, eat it too, all the things, right? There has to be some, discipline involved. And really refined sugar, our bodies are not designed for it. It seems to me and everything that I've read that refined sugar is the worst thing for our bodies. And this is for health, but this is also for weight, So, when do you eat? Having those breaks from food, and then what to avoid. So at the top of that list, refined sugar, avoiding that as much as you can. And look, I don't believe that we can live with a really restrictive diet. And that's why I think whatever eating strategy you land on, there does have to be room for flexibility. Like my son's birthday's coming up and I'm going to make whatever dessert or cake he wants. My son is very disciplined too. He is very, does not eat sugar a lot, but when it's a celebration, we're going to eat something and there's probably going to be refined sugar in it. And that's okay. Having life, being able to navigate life in a way that you enjoy it, and you're structuring your eating strategy to allow you to do that without it being detrimental to your results in both your health and your weight. So, but on a daily basis, when my eating window opens, I'm avoiding refined sugar. I'm avoiding anything that's highly processed. And so that means, chips that come in a bag that might say protein or not, or anything with artificial flavors. I mean, there's so many convenience foods. You walk into a gas station and almost everything in there is beautifully packaged. There's, cool benefits written on the packaging. It looks enticing. It tastes good. Almost all of it is fully processed and refined. And so those are on the list to avoid, right? Doesn't mean we never ever can eat them, but for the most part, avoiding these when you are eating. And then the third thing that I've landed on is knowing what to prioritize. And so really prioritizing for me when it's my eating window opens and when I think of, what am I going to make sure to eat? Prioritizing fiber is really, really big. And so fiber, you can get that through nuts and seeds. You can get that through vegetables, a salad, fruit. I've really become reacquainted with just whole fruit, right? Which nature produces. This is caveman approved as well, right? You get those sweet flavors. It's not refined. Your body's designed to be able to digest it, right? So fiber comes in so many forms and is so important. So prioritizing that. And then this one is so counterintuitive to everything that I learned in the 90s, but really fueling with fat and not being afraid of getting healthy fat as part of what you eat. In the 90s, they were very formative years for me. And really years where I was just starting to realize maybe I want to lose some weight, or maybe I don't like how my body looks. Maybe I should think about what I'm eating. Everything in the media at the time was low fat, fat will make you fat. And it's ridiculous now, looking back and thinking oh my gosh, I bought into that for so many years where, trying to stay away from cheese and butter and peanut butter and nuts and anything that really was high in fat. But then when you learn the science of how our bodies get so much fuel from fat, and fat does not equal putting on fat. So prioritizing fiber, fat, and protein. Protein really is the building block for our muscles. It fills us up like the fat does. And it's an important, macronutrient. So notice that nothing on here is, other than the sugar, is really don't ever eat this or only eat that. And I've really found for me, that's not a way that I want to live. I don't think that's how we were designed to live, to be in such a tight little box with our diet. So this is really what's working for me, is when to eat, having those big periods of time where I'm not eating anything, knowing what to avoid, which refined sugar, highly processed foods, and then knowing what to prioritize, which is fiber, fat, and protein. So that's where I'm at. That's what I wanted to share with what do we eat? And this strategy opens us up to really enjoy food, because there are so many things that we can do with whole foods and foods that are, maybe they're slightly processed, but they're not highly processed. And it just, I'm living in a way where I don't feel like I have such restrictions, which it maybe kind of sounds ironic because I do have a big period of the day where I don't eat, which you could look at as a restriction, but the experience of, the strategy of having an eating window doesn't feel like restriction, because it's really just delaying having what you're going to have. And then once your body and your hormones are on this schedule and they're used to it, I don't feel hungry until it's time to eat. And then when it's time to eat, I'm not weighing things out. I'm enjoying these great foods that I love, and I'm prioritizing what I know I need, and it feels amazing. So that's my take today on where I'm at with this journey. And who knows, there might be the next level of this journey and the next, insight onto what to best eat, when to eat, what to avoid, and what to prioritize. So I'm curious for everybody watching where you're at with how do you decide what to eat? I shared my strategy, and Shelby and Maine have put in, their 2 cents on what they're doing. And I'm just curious if you want to share something as far as like where you're at with all of this. And do you have a strategy, kind of like I do, that's working for you, that allows you to eat the foods that you love, to stay healthy, and to stay at a really healthy weight? So thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Please like, subscribe, share this channel, and come back next week for more content.
Thanks for watching Developing Potential with Diana Keuilian.